of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, oh, why are you going to play on the show?
Those guys that they're listening this morning, go get a couple of copies, maybe you'll learn something.
We both have to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that.
He is the free American, free Douglas. Catch the free American weekdays, 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
Every time I think about it, down and this and that, the anger melts inside me till I'm almost overcome. I want to tear the moon out of the sky and stop the sun.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American. I'm your host. I am Clay Douglas. And we're still talking about Waco. And it's Memorial Day. And in that line, I want you to know that one of the bikers killed in Waco shootout was an ex-Marine with a Purple Heart. Jesus Delgado Rodriguez, 65, was a Marine on active duty from 1969 to 1973 and received a Purple Heart given to those killed or wounded in action. It's Memorial Day. And so, in honor of that, and yeah, I've told you that some of these motorcycle members, club members, not a gang, there were 9 of them killed and 18 others injured in the ensuing melee. We're going to be talking about that. And Jesus Delgado Rodriguez was the oldest, 65, younger than me. Richard Matthew Jordan II, 31. Charles Wayne Russell, 46. Daniel Raymond Boyette, 44. Wayne Lee Campbell, 43. Jacob Lee Ryan, 39. Richard Vincent Kirshner, Jr., 47. Manuel Isaac Rodriguez, 40. Matthew Mark Smith, 27. It's Memorial Day. And these people were killed in combat by people that are supposed to be on their side, supposed to be protecting and serving them, just because they were riding a bike or just because they had a patch on their back. And some don't like that, and I've gone through that. This whole thing with militias, I've gone through 2 bike clubs. Yeah, we got followed a lot. According to the driver's license records, 4 of these men are from North Texas. Records for Wayne Lee Campbell trace back addresses to Fort Worth and Arlington, or Richard Vincent Kirshner, Jr. to Wiley, Manuel Isaac Rodriguez to Allen, and Matthew Mark Smith to Keller. Of the 18 injured in the violence, 7 remained in the hospital as of Tuesday morning. Of those still hospitalized, all are stable and most improving, said Waco police spokesman Sergeant W. Patrick Swanton. And he warned that the violence may not be over. The sergeant said violence usually begets violence when it comes to biker gangs, he says. So when asked if the threat was over, he replied, most likely not. Bond is set at $1 million for each of the 170 individuals who are facing charges. Rivals were being kept apart at McLennan County Jail. Police were still only halfway through the booking process at the end of the day. Those under arrest come from all over the state. Now there's more you need to know. The death toll from the Twin Peaks shootout was greater than the total number of homicides Waco police investigated in all of 2014. And all of the Twin Peaks dead were shot by police. Previously, Waco police spokesman W. Patrick Swanton stated that 22 members of law enforcement were present prior to the outbreak of the shooting, including 10 members of the Waco SWAT unit, 2 sergeants, 1 rookie, the assistant chief of police, and 4 state troopers. Newly released information today includes the Waco police stating that 14 Waco police officers were involved in firing shots which killed 9 bike club members and wounded 18 more. The 14 officers involved in the gun battle are now all of them on administrative leave, which is standard protocol in officer-involved shootings. In addition, Swanton previously stated that all of the 170 arrested bikers were known criminal gang members. However, a review of the Associated Press, of court records finds that at least 115 of the 170 had no police records. Waco police said all of those arrested after the shooting belonged to criminal motorcycle gangs. Most were being held on $1 million bonds on Thursday, charged with engaging in criminal enterprise, and 9 people were killed in Sunday's shootout. Records searched by the Associated Press showed that more than 115 of the 170 people arrested in the aftermath of the shootout outside the Central Texas restaurant have not been convicted of a crime in Texas. After previously saying he had not watched the CCTV video from the restaurant bar yesterday, which was reviewed by Associated Press reporters, Swanton said now he has watched the CCTV video. He said he viewed surveillance videos of the violence, said they tell a different story from some of the accounts being spun online. We can't wait to show you what happened, he said. Then why haven't they? This is a disingenuous statement at best, because all they need to do is authorize the restaurant to release a video and the public can decide for themselves. And there is one of the family members of a man killed in the biker shootout at a Texas restaurant says he was not part of an outlaw motorcycle gang. This contradicts police claims that all 9 of the bikers who died were members of criminal gangs. The son of 65-year-old Jesus Delgado Rodriguez of New Braunfels told the San Antonio Express News that his father did not lead a life of violence. Associated Press review of court records and database maintained by the Texas Department of Public Safety found no criminal history in Texas for Rodriguez. Family members said Rodriguez had belonged to 2 now defunct motorcycle clubs, but was not part of any club when he was shot and killed at the Twin Peaks restaurant in Waco. Swanton told the AP on Wednesday that all those killed were members of the Bandidos or Cossacks, and he's not returning his phone calls. In addition, from a lawsuit filed against Twin Peaks by the neighboring restaurant Don Carlos, it is claimed that police fired thousands of rounds toward the bikers, striking not only bike club members, but also Don Carlos customer vehicles. Now, it's entirely possible that some of the bikers had a record. It's also entirely possible that twitchy police responded excessively and overreacted to a perceived threat. These two possibilities are not mutually exclusive. Who shot at whom first? Who did or did not pull the trigger? And what might have spurred the 14 police officers to fire thousands of rounds at a group of 3 to 5 potentially armed bikers when the downrange backdrop was a patio filled with hundreds of unarmed bikers is not yet known. And then there's a picture here showing the vehicles in the Don Carlos restaurant next door with bullet holes in it. And the direction of fire from Don Carlos towards Twin Peaks, the downrange backdrop for that fire and for the bullets that missed their target is the patio of Twin Peaks. However, apparently pointing at a strong possibility of an overreaction by twitchy police is now considered conspiracy theory or something. A radio broadcast today calls our previous outline, which quoted mainstream media information, as conspiracy theory. Interesting how intelligent people cannot bring themselves to believe that the police or our government may have influenced, initiated, created, and or worsened events with their militarized SWAT presence at a bike club meeting. Ruby Ridge? How about Move in Philadelphia? How about Waco 1 and perhaps the recent Baby Boo ringing any bells? Cops makes mistakes too, and of course that's a little baby whose face is disfigured from a flashbang grenade thrown in his crib. Does anyone else find it curious that an assistant police chief was on the scene at Twin Peaks along with the SWAT unit, presumably as a scene commander prior to the shootings, yet no one has heard from him or her? Does anyone else find it curious that initial police statements claiming they had an active intelligence operation on the bike gang, which customarily would include monitoring cameras, videos, etc., and yet the police released no video to support their "we were under fire" claims? Yeah, previous comment sums up the strange sniff of it all nicely. I'm former law enforcement for over 20 years. I've ridden with 2 different law enforcement motorcycle clubs, LEMC clubs. I worked undercover back in the late 80s and have dealt with 1% clubs many times. I have friends in 1% clubs. I'm pro-law enforcement, but have a funny feeling there's a lot of horse shit in the story that the Waco PD is telling. I have family living and working in that area. They've had interaction with the clubs and never felt scared or intimidated, always felt safe. Now, are we going to get the truth or more bullshit? I'm tending to believe the biker side of this deal more and more every day that passes. Too many people arrested and charged with RICO that were just spending time at Twin Peaks. I think law enforcement has overstepped its authority on filing these type charges on most these people. $1 million bonds? Bullshit. Even if you find reasonable excuses for all the Leo contradictions, fights in the bathroom, shots inside, all killed were inside, dragged out, etc., even if you ignore all the misleading statements by law enforcement spokesman Patrick Swanton, 100 weapons, 50 weapons, 1,000 weapons, etc., Even if you ignore the lack of willingness to produce factual evidence to support their claims, you're still left with a ridiculous assertion that 170 non-criminal people deserve a $1 million bond because they rode a motorcycle last Sunday to a meeting and possibly witnessed what happened. The total number of bikers on the scene, according to Swinton, was 200. 170 were arrested, 18 were wounded, 9 were killed. That totals 197, so only 3 people were non-conspirators. The nonsense about weapons found in vehicles, etc., is just that, nonsense. If you go to a Waco, Texas Walmart on Sunday, rope off the parking lot, arrest the first 200 people you see, and search their pickup trucks, SUVs, and various vehicles, you'll probably come up with a similar set of statistics. 50 out of 200 people captured at Walmart with prior arrest records, some with pocket knives, chains, handguns, and even rifles in their vehicles. So what? None of that is legal or unlawful or ridiculous. Go to a Bass Pro Shop on Saturday and you'll find even better stats if that's a goal. Another factor which makes it all the more curious is these are actual talking points Sergeant Patrick Swinton is relying on to justify the shooting. This innocuous nonsense is what they are focused on. That itself indicates to a reasonably discerning person there's something uncomfortable about the narrative these LEO responders are trying to avoid. That's not conspiracy, that's just common sense. It's not conspiracy theory. The incident occurred at 12:24 p.m. Central Time, and in around 90 minutes, 2:04 p.m. Central Standard Time, this press conference was held giving the specifics of the 9 dead and 18 wounded and a restaurant owner who needs to be shut down for non-compliance.
This is the News Channel 25 Special Report.
We are up here programming again to bring you the latest on the biker gang shooting outside of Waco restaurants.
Patrick Swan from Waco PD talking now.
An event here at Twin Peaks. We have been made aware in the past few months of rival biker gangs, rival criminal biker gangs being here and causing issues. We have attempted to work with the local management of Twin Peaks to get that cut back, to no avail. They have not been of much assistance to us. However, we continue doing our part on gathering intelligence. Apparently the management wanted them here, so we didn't have any say-so on whether they could be here or not. We do know that they are an issue. We do know that they are criminal biker gangs, very well known in our area. There were at least 3 rival gang groups here this morning, for whatever reason. As they were here, we had officers on scene. We expected issues. Because of the problems, we had at least 12 Waco officers, along with several other DPS officers that were assisting us in trying to maintain security for the perimeter and for the citizens of our area. Shortly after 12:15, a fight broke out inside that spilled into the parking lot of Twin Peaks. As that fight progressed, it progressed very rapidly from hands and feet as weapons to chains. My understanding, a club was involved and knives were involved. It even progressed further. At that point, our officers were moving to the scene to assist, at which point gunfire broke out on the part of the criminal biker gangs. They were involved in shooting at each other. Those biker rival gangs were firing weapons at each individual. Our officers moved in. At that point, we treated it as an active shooter scene, meaning that we had potential citizens involved that could have been killed or injured. and other bikers that were being killed and injured. Our officers moved in, our officers did fire. So we have officers that are involved as well in shooting some of the biker gang members. At this point, we have 8 confirmed dead here on the scene, and another individual has been pronounced deceased at one of the hospitals. There's not a whole lot more I can give you at this point other than to tell you that there are numerous other individuals that have been injured. No officers have been injured in the shooting. I can go a little...
In other words, all these armed biker members in a firefight, and none of them shot back at police. This is an incredible amount of bullshit. You know, folks, I have been a gang member, 2 different clubs, just small clubs, nothing major. They ended up merging with the bigger clubs after I had left. But I published magazines, and I've done stories on and been friends with outlaws, Hells Angels, banditos, barons, a lot more. I didn't wear a patch because I wrote about them. And I don't play partisan. I'm not choosing the banditos over the Cossacks. It's like I've told you, I don't care who your grandmother slept with. But what is happening with the bikers now, been happening a long time. Used to follow us around. Anytime we'd go somewhere, we'd take a ride, and boy, there'd be some police following us. No big deal. And every event that we went to, that was staged and that I went to, there were police there taking pictures. Hi guys, did you get my name right? It's Clay Douglas. Want you to know who I am. Oh, we know who you are, Clay. We know who you are. You published that magazine, and I've always been pretty fair about that. And so, this whole thing coming on the eve of Jade Helm. And when you're going to have soldiers here, my God, what if there had been soldiers stationed in that thing, programmed to think that the banditos and the Cossacks were enemies, were dangerous people. We got to round them up. We got to round them up. Pretty incredible. But this is what they're going to do. This is a war. Now, Swinton, of course, said violence usually begets violence when it comes to biker gangs. When asked if the threat was over, most likely not. And a bond's being set again at $1 million for each of the 170 individuals. For them to make that bond, even with 10%, $100,000, $10,000. How many bikers can afford that? And this investigation could take weeks, if not months, police said. We're in the process of diagramming every piece of evidence, every vehicle, every blood spot, every body that was there, Swan said. 18 officers and 4 state troopers were just outside Twin Peaks restaurant, they said, before the violence erupted after noon. And I want you to understand, all it would take is one undercover officer to fire a weapon, to shoot somebody, even if it was up in the air, for these police to feel like they were under fire and to open up. This whole thing could have been staged. And as far as I'm concerned, this is just as bad as the first Waco one. Now, Swanton said that the officers positioned at the restaurant ahead of time were among the best trained in the department and were in marked vehicles in the parking lot and driveway. They were not inside the Twin Peaks restaurant because management of the restaurant declined to cooperate. If you have a police department asking for your assistance as a business, you ought to pay attention to that. If you don't, bad things can happen, Swanton. Sounds like a threat. Sounds like, oh, see, you didn't cooperate with the police. You didn't let us search your customers. You didn't let us harass your customer. Whoa, bad things could happen to you. Now, police said autopsies will determine how many of those killed were shot by officers. Swanton said it's still to be determined how many officers fired the weapons, but he said 3 to 4 was a good estimate. Now, Waco police said the fight started in the bathroom at Twin Peaks restaurant at a Central Texas marketplace, and one biker group made up of several smaller gangs had reserved the outdoor portion of the restaurant on Sunday, and the dispute began when a rival group showed up uninvited. I don't believe that, and I'm not buying into that. The Banditos and the Cossacks are established clubs, and this was a council of clubs meeting, not a gang meeting. And a statement late Monday from the operators of the restaurant disputes the police account. It is important to clarify, to the best of our knowledge, law enforcement officers did not ask either the Waco restaurant operator, with whom they spoke several times, or the Twin Peaks franchisor to cancel the patio event that was made on Sunday. Based on the information to date, we also believe that the violence began outside in the area of the parking lot, not inside our restaurant or on our patio, as has been widely reported. Police said the bikers used guns, knives, brass knuckles, and chains. More than 100 weapons were taken into evidence. Intelligence officials told WFAA the bloodshed was the result of a turf war between two of the gangs. I'm not about to give them the respect of mentioning their names, as Swanton said. They're not here to drink beer and eat barbecue. They came with violence in mind. Oh, this is our real neutral spokesman, isn't it? Swanton said there had been credible, reliable threats on law enforcement officer in Waco, but those had toned down in the last day. He said there's still a large contingent of local, state, and federal officials in the city, and police hope things will continue to tone down through the holiday weekend. And they want to again try to portray bikers as the clubs as serious criminal enterprises. And the Twin Peaks restaurant chain is based in Addison. Its Waco location was operated by a franchisee. The company offered this statement on Monday. Unfortunately, the management team of the franchise restaurant in Waco chose to ignore the warnings and advice from both the police and our company and did not uphold the high security standard we have in place to ensure that everyone is safe at our restaurants. We will not tolerate the actions of this relatively new franchisee and are immediately revoking their franchise agreement. Further, we learned that Twin Peaks is ending bike night at each of its 76 locations around the country. The Waco franchisee said in Monday's statement they were disappointed with the sudden decision by Twin Peaks to sever its relationship. We'll continue to assist authorities in any way possible that will assist in their efforts to bring the wrongdoers to justice. What if those wrongdoers are the Waco Police Department? In the last 24 hours, many people have heard the names of Banditos and Cossacks for the first time. But the Texas Department of Public Safety I'm glad I found the names of the bikers and was able to get them on today's show. This one I just filled back up. Now, this is coming down to the police departments with this homegrown terrorism thing when they're trying to demonize veterans. They're trying to demonize militia members. And what they're really doing is going after the American people, anyone that's independent, whether they're a gun owner, no matter what they are. Let's see what we got here. You know, all the bikers that whether they were with the Hells Angels, Vietnam vets, Banditos, Hells Angels, these were just family men.
We've got a little corner of the world with your name on it. That is, if your name is Clinton Nightlife Museum Civil Rights Ballpark Brew Pub or something. Come discover Arkansas.
A WFAA story, stick with me.
Live from Victory Park, this is News 8 at 10.
Motorcycles finally towed off in Waco tonight. This more than 24 hours after that rival biker gang shootout that left 9 people dead. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm John McKay.
And I'm Cynthia Segueda. Thank you for joining us for News 8 at 10. We've got new information from Waco police within the last couple of hours. Officers still are not ready to release the names of the dead as they work to notify family members. Twin Peaks has revoked the Waco location's franchise following the parking lot shootout between the Banditos and the Cossacks. And for the 170 suspects involved, bond is set at $1 million. Rival gang members are being kept separate inside the McLennan County Jail for safety reasons, and tonight, police are only halfway through the booking process.
Now, the Banditos have a violent history in Tarrant County. Our Todd Unger is covering that part of the story, but we want to begin with Marie Saavedra. She's live with the latest from investigators in Waco. Marie?
John, they gave us the last update of the night around 7, saying that they did a lot of good work today gathering evidence from this scene, but they are not done and hope to finish sometime tomorrow. In the meantime, we are finally hearing from the man that operates this Twin Peaks. And what he said happened here Sunday contradicts what we've heard from police.
We are in the process of moving motorcycles out of the
area. It's a scene where every bike could be a piece of evidence as rival gangs and police collided Sunday at Twin Peaks. In the hours since, many fingers have pointed to the Waco restaurant's owner and operator, who in a statement called the violence horrific. But he then went on to correct what he says investigators got wrong. First, Waco police say they asked the owner to stop hosting bikers. He claims law enforcement did not ask anyone at Twin Peaks to cancel the patio reservation made for the gang on Sunday. Next, police report the gun battle began in the restaurant, but the owner says the violence began outside in the area of the parking lot.
That'll all come out in the wash and we'll see.
Sergeant Patrick Swanton with Waco Police stands by his statement and is now applauding Twin Peaks corporate for cutting ties with that franchisee.
We're appreciative of their effort and their support towards law enforcement. And they want to make things right as well, and that's apparent by removing the franchise from what they did today.
But the feeling remains that this could have been prevented. Today, News 8 obtained a law enforcement bulletin dated May 1st, warning of war between the Bandidos and the Cossack gangs, outlining at least 5 clashes between them since late March.
We constantly share information back and forth from agency to agency.
That may be why members of DPS staged here with police Sunday ahead of the gang's gathering. It's also why the pressure and surveillance on those bikers will increase from here on out.
Waco police say this is not the first time they've had an incident with a bike gang at this Twin Peaks location. Officers say they have even contacted Twin Peaks corporate to tell them about this situation. Still, tonight, the operator of this restaurant says he is disappointed that the company decided to cancel the Waco franchise because, in his words, they haven't yet learned all the facts. Live in Waco, Marisa Vabra, Channel 8 News.
Well, that's the corporate side. There's Channel 8 News going along with the police, covering up for the police just like they did when they murdered about 100 Christians at Waco at the Branch Davidians. Not a compound, a home, a church.
We've got a little corner of the world with your name on it. That is, if your name is Swimming Hole.
Today is Memorial Day, and I want to do this for you. Jesus Delgado Rodriguez was one Marine that we know died in this. For Memorial Day. Actually, I'm going to do one more commercial. Let's do this. All right, good to see Dr. Decharge in here. And we had one infiltrator in the chat room. They always announce who they are, so he's gone. If you want to call in, the number to call in is 646-915-8774. What happened here? It's not doing what it's supposed to do. Let's see.
Hello, friends. This is RJ, the Mighty Phoenix. Friends, if you're a business owner and need capital to sustain or accentuate your business, and if you've been in business for 2 years or more, and your credit scores are low as 500, I can help you. Credit scores don't pay back with money that you borrow. Credit scores are only weapons being used against you in the war on small business.
This is nothing but static
you pay back money that you borrow with business money's earned. So if you have 6 recent bank statements, and your business is active, and as I said, you've been in business for over 2 years, I can get you money within 8 business days. Contact me at R as in Russell, J as in James, P as in Peter, P as in Peter again, A as in Arthur, P as in Peter again, A as in Arthur, at yahoo.com. That's RJPTAPA at yahoo.com. And if you're not in business and you need to earn extra cash and you don't want to go out and work for someone who's going to take advantage of you, or you don't want to spend the money to gas and get paid minimum wage, you can work with me, not for me, and earn big commissions. And all you need to do is place ads on the computer, on the internet, on Craigslist, on Backpage, on other sites, in the financial section. Only 15 minutes a day. Again, contact me at rjppata@yahoo.com. Leave your cell phone number. I'll get back to you within 24 hours. And we'll discuss the issue. I can help you. Again, rjppata@yahoo.com. Have a great day, folks.
Now, I've got a report here by the ATF, and the ATF were there. They had something to do with this. What, I don't know. But they put out a 40-page report, Organized Motorcycle Gangs, OMGs, and the Military in 2014. This was issued by ATF Office of Strategic Intelligence and Information in July of last year. Warned of the escalated violence of these gangs, their insatiable appetite for dominance has led to shootings, assaults, and malicious attacks across the globe. OMGs continue to maim and murder over territory, the report said, as tensions escalate. Brazen shootings are occurring in broad daylight. Now, keep in mind that this report is coming from the agency that was responsible for the first Waco, when they killed 17 little children to save them from a child molester. It's the same agency that sold guns and allowed dealers to sell guns to Mexican cartels. And Eric Holder may be gone, but nobody's been arrested over this. And they say this report's based on intelligence gathered by dozens of law enforcement, military intelligence agencies, and identifies about 100 alleged associates of the country's most violent outlaw motorcycle gangs and support clubs who have worked in sensitive government or military positions. These gangs continue to court active duty military personnel and government workers, both civilians and contractors, for their knowledge and reliable income, tactical skills, and dedication to a cause, according to the report. Through our extensive analysis, it has been revealed that a large number of support clubs are utilizing active duty military personnel and U.S. Department of Defense, DoD contractors, and employees to spread their tentacles across America. The report predicted that 6 dominant OMGs, mongrels, Hells Angels, outlaws, pagans, banditos, and vagos would continue to expand with escalating violence. The groups are known as one-percenter clubs, a moniker they proudly use to denote their outlaw status. The report identifies the most violent as banditos and Hells Angels support clubs, the same groups involved in the deadly shootout in Waco, Texas on Sunday. The deadly confrontation between the banditos and the rival club, the Cossacks MC, who are backed by banditos' arch rivals, the Hells Angels. The shootout is a part of an ongoing turf value without permission from the banditos. Cossack members have begun wearing a patch on their vests that claim Texas is the club's territory. A figurative thumb in the eye of the banditos along the state's dominant motorcycle clubs. 9 people were killed and more than 170 bikers were arrested in the noontime shutdown. On Thursday, law enforcement enforcement in Texas confirmed to several media outlets that one of the bikers arrested in the massive post-shootout sweep was a former San Antonio police officer who joined the banditos after retiring from the department after 32 years. The ATF report identifies the banditos as the dominant and most violent of all of the motorcycle gangs in Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, and identifies a staff sergeant instructor in the U.S. Air Force currently stationed at Kessler Air Force Base as the president of the local Pistoleros chapter, a bandito support club. According to the report, he routinely hosts parties for active duty military personnel. In response to questions about the report, an ATF spokesman said this was supposed to be solely a law enforcement tool to help fight violent crime. It was not supposed to be out there in the ether for general consumption. The Intercept, after consulting with the ATF, has redacted some portions of the report. In an interview, Edward Winterhalter, a former high-ranking member of the Banditos who left the club in 2003, said while military veterans have long been involved in motorcycle clubs, many of the current outlaw clubs were formed in the wake of World War II. Current duty military or law enforcement members are not generally involved in the most violent gangs. According to Winterhalter, biker clubs not associated with the violent 1%er have many government employees, current military, law enforcement, firefighters as members. Indeed, some clubs have emerged that profoundly disavow any connection to violence or lawlessness, or specifically bill themselves as LEMC, Law Enforcement Motorcycle Club. Among those are the Iron Circle LEMC, Texas Club formed in 2006, Arizona-founded Roughnecks Country MC, for the 99% that give a shit about society and the laws that govern the world we live in. The Iron Order MC, a fiercely independent club that strongly rejects the ethos of 1%ers, and the Protectors LEMC, which requires a criminal background check for prospective members. Nonetheless, the report documents extensive involvement of current duty military and government personnel in the outlaw groups, does not mention LEMCs. The report is a testament to how seriously law enforcement takes the issue of outlaw motorcycle gang, detailing extensive surveillance of the document, which includes copies of military or government identification photos, some gained from traffic stops, and information from what appears to be close monitoring of military and government officials who attend the group's activities, gatherings across the country. All right. I wanted to do that to do this.
Vietnam. It is interesting how a word can invoke so many feelings, memories, images, emotions, and so different for each soul. Back in the mid-60s, I wrote my first songs wanting desperately to make a difference with my music. And so I was also a seeker, you could say, and a deep thinker. But being a seeker in the 60s was intense. There was a lot to contemplate for those of us who dared to question the establishment, such as the civil rights movement spearheaded by the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. And then there was the Enlightenment movement, influenced by visiting Mahatmas and Maharishis who were introducing their version of spiritual awakening. We watched the sexual revolution ravel and unravel while we followed the Look magazine reports all the way to the colorful and dreamy homesteads of back to the landers who hand in hand shared community bliss in their organic utopias. And then there was the Vietnam War. Right in the middle of it all. Music lit.
Now, I want you to understand, folks, and hopefully this will allow you to understand me a little bit better. I volunteered for Vietnam. When I learned about the Gulf of Tonkin incident, and even before that, when right after I took a test for Officers Candidate School, passed it with flying colors, but didn't get it. Wasn't allowed to become an officer. And I was almost killed by spinal meningitis, possibly resulting from a vaccination. Wasn't the only one. Half of the people in my squad, when we went through and got the injections, screamed as they came out the door, and we carried half of our squad back to the barracks. I got out shortly after that, supposed to go to Fort Hood and get a pension, but they didn't send me there. They just cut me loose. Honorable discharge under medical conditions, and then for 50 years they told me I didn't stay in long enough to qualify for my VA. That was a lie. That was a lie. And for the years after she talked about the peaceful revolution, I was part of the anti-war movement, but nobody ever spit on a veteran, a Vietnam vet, around me. I sold peace symbols to Kmart's, to 7-Elevens, to gift shops, Spencer's Gifts. And by doing that, I started selling them to head shops, and then I got into the head shop business, and I was in that for many, many years in the paraphernalia industry. Helped start Normal. And financed Jack Harrow while he wrote Emperor Wears No Clothes. Always supported our veterans, always support especially the Vietnam Vets Motorcycle Club that the FBI considers one of the largest paramilitary organizations, most well-armed paramilitary organization. Well, absolutely. We were trained and we did that. Those of us that survived. Those of us that came back. And many of the Vietnam vets came back and did exactly what I did. They bought a Harley and they started riding. It's talk about post-traumatic stress. It's certainly been there. Yeah, I volunteered for Vietnam, but then I learned there was no reason for us to be there. And the people of Vietnam, it was our first guerrilla warfare. It's what we're facing right now. What that just happened at Waco could result in guerrilla warfare against the United States government that has tried to turn our law enforcement people against the bikers. And the bikers, like the militia, I've already gone through that 20 years ago. I helped start the militias. Again, not a terrorist organization any more than the bikers are a terrorist organization. They're not. They're your family members. They're your brothers. They're our brothers, and many of the Vietnam vets. Some of them have become Hell's Angels. Some of them have gone over to Banditos. I knew Mother Chambers, Mother Don Chambers. Unfortunately, we got to know each other in prison. Me for pot, him for being a bandito. He's no longer alive. But I still have a fondness for the Banditos because my first club, the Ghost Riders of Euless, Texas, after I left, Texas passed a Helmut law, I didn't stay. Top of the hour. Truth Radio, hang on, we're going to talk about Vietnam on Memorial Day 2015. Stay with me. All right. As soon as this commercial gets off of Truth Radio, we will be listening to Ann Wolf. Ann Wolf talking about after Vietnam. And I went through this. Started the paraphernalia industry, financed Jack Harrah, and through my efforts, we got marijuana legalized in one state so far. Texas is going to vote on it. I doubt that they'll do anything. But we'll see.
From Bob Dylan's provocative and poetic portrayals of the cultural crisis du jour to the heroism and electricity of Hendrix, and meanwhile Janis Joplin poured her guts out with every song she sang. History was playing it all out in music, and Nam was central to many of the stories being told, from those who had been there, as well as on the part of others who vented about the so-called war machine with a procession.
Vietnam vets against the war from the 60s. And I put this film up after Vietnam, The Healing. I put that up on my Facebook, and freeamerican.com. Go ahead.
Of platitudes unique to the Vietnam War debate. I also remembered the daily news from Nam and all the still shots and casualty reports that left my mind numb. At times I tried to imagine what life was like for the soldiers. I had lived in foreign nations as a child and I had seen extreme poverty. I had known the feeling of intense heat and humidity beating down on my skin, a razor-sharp scourge to the flesh that only jungles can produce. But I had never known war. And as for liberty and its cost, honestly, no matter how much of a deep thinker I might have thought myself to be at that time, what could I have really known about the price of freedom being paid by our military in Southeast Asia? As for those who were serving over there, well, they likely didn't know either starting out, until the Huey dropped them off in a field somewhere. Welcome to hell was the theme upon their arrival to the zone, where behind any bush, hut, or slope, even within the skirts of women holding their young, the enemy could lurch forward, indulging in their favorite forms of destruction, and always with a surprise element, which guerrilla warfare never fails to bring. Yes, these recruits learned far too much about the price of freedom, and too fast, as their innocence was replaced by battle-driven grit, and as they slipped deep into sheer survival mode, they adapted with lightning speed to the unimaginable as they watched out for each other, having arrived as strangers but soon becoming brothers and sisters. But as if the horror of war was not enough, this was by and large a conflict not understood or supported by the citizens of the USA, and while legislators back home condescended to administer policy, our veterans endured agonizing frustrations, being throttled in their efforts as they faced the perils which always result from unchecked bureaucracy. Meanwhile, as I continued my soul-searching safe on the homeland, I soon realized that this group of Americans were caught in the middle of an agonizing storm of controversy, a group who were not afforded the luxury of contemplation as they crept through sweltering swamps and jungles, every sense extended with hypervigilance brought on by the unique warfare occurring in Southeast Asia. Surviving their tour of duty physically involved one set of acquired skills as they passed through the eternity of moments each day. But as they watched their numbers diminishing, they faced even more everlasting nightmares, dealing daily with unimaginable losses as they watched their buddies fall beside them, one by one, or as they were called upon to do the unimaginable, and not what their mama taught them to do. But worst of all, most were left with the searing and relentless guilt of finding themselves to be a survivor, and guilt is a nemesis of any soul. But this would...
You know, I have to deal with that for the last 50 years. I went to the Vietnam Vets Memorial in Washington, D.C. I've been with Rolling Thunder. I promoted Rolling Thunder for 20 years. I want to know where our MIAs and our POWs are, what happened to them. And I've dealt with the guilt by wondering why I lived, why I was spared going there.
Be just the beginning of their purgatory, because when the day finally came that the Huey, boat, or plane took them from the battlefield, either whole or in pieces, they were to face the next chapter of their lives in numb disbelief. And arriving back home, they had to survive new rounds of fiery darts from the jeers, the insults, the ugly and unfounded accusations. They were spit upon, cursed, and reports circulated at times describing bodily waste being tossed at veterans arriving home at airports. All this being a far cry from the flag-lined terminals we see today when our veterans return from war. This excursion, though yet another classroom of hell, led to one of the worst kinds of loneliness of all, being rejected by the very people and the very nation that they had served with their lives, surviving physical, mental, and emotionless states that could never be understood or even explained with words unless they might encounter another veteran who had also been there. But who would be able or willing to speak about the unspeakable? Because for many years, few talked out loud about Nam, and with no welcome home, many simply hid their uniforms, threw on civilian clothes as quickly as they could, tried to blend into the crowds as they made their way through to somewhere. But where? Between the outer calamity of rejection and the inner unspoken grieving and rage, between the fog of war still lingering in their brains and the cultural war zone at home, many became standing wanderers, seeming to be present while on the inside they were anywhere but here. And after years of damming up the unshed tears, and after waiting more years, even decades, for help from government agencies, which they hoped might address their wounds, at least some of the ones on the outside, a question burned in their souls. How can you...
It's taken me 50 years to get recognized by the VA. Lost my records, couldn't find it. There was a fire in St. Louis, there was a fire here, there was a fire there, and I finally got it. I finally got it. U.S. Department of Government Affairs. And I'm still, am I going to get anything from them? I got no idea. I found the paperwork, I found my medical records, and I've got medical records of when a government, mine, ours, someone else's, tried to kill me 10 years ago. We tried to put all this back together again. And at the same time, I want to support our veterans. I don't want to see anybody else go to Afghanistan to protect the opium poppies. I don't want to see anybody going to Iraq to support the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service, ISIS. No, I don't want to see that happen.
Wanderers, seeming to be present, while on the inside they...
I call... Don't worry about walking a mile in my shoes. Just try a day thinking in my head. I've called myself the Eternal Stranger. I've traveled 49 states looking for something, and I still don't know that I've found it. Don't know that I found the support that I need from the people out there I was doing this for. I didn't do this to get wealthy. I didn't do this because I wanted to write about it. It just happened around me and I wrote about it. Mystery Babylon, the New World Order Unveiled.
Were anywhere but here. And after years of damming up the unshed tears, and after waiting more years, even decades, for help from government agencies, which they hoped might address their wounds, at least some of the ones on the outside, a question burned in their souls. How can you come home when you don't know where your home has gone?
49 states. How many thousands of miles I've traveled looking for America.
This presentation is dedicated to our Vietnam veterans and to their families in honor, in remembrance, and with fervent prayers for their healing and peace. The following quotes are from some of our Vietnam veterans, family members, or friends of veterans who will share their feelings, their perspective, their disappointments, and their hopes. Some have made a statement, Some have offered a part of a song or poem they have written, and a few of our guest presenters will share why they work so hard today to make sure that all of our veterans receive the full support they need upon their return from battle. So though we face much work ahead to ensure the needs of our veterans, the good news is that there's a growing number of people who are awakening to this cause and who are coming forward in support of our military and their families. They are lining the streets and airport terminals to pay their respects at parades and memorials. They are volunteering in so many creative ways through their community events, organizations, and even by approaching their legislators to insist upon decent treatment of our veterans.
And that's happening today. In Washington, D.C., there are 10,000 bikers, maybe a few gang members, are riding in Washington, D.C. for the POWs and MIAs, for the ones we still haven't brought home. Rolling Thunder is happening today. And I've supported that in my magazines, on my radio show for 20 years.
Today and every day, I join Americans from all over our nation saying, welcome home, and thank you for your service from the bottom of our hearts. We begin with the words of Vietnam veteran Rob Owensby. It was an honor and a privilege to serve my country. Regarding Vietnam, I would not take anything for the experience, but I pray that no one would have to go through that. I am proud of my combat brothers and all the support soldiers who helped me make it through the war. My personal opinion is that the war would have been a short war if the politicians would have let the military handle it. Viper shares, our motto for 1st Force Recon Strike Team 5 was, if we don't come back together, we don't come back. We had a special bond that went beyond the Corps. We became brothers for life. When your life depends on the 4 other men on your team, you need to have a degree of trust that most people would never understand. I don't know how it was for other units, but for us, that was just how it was. I got your 6 was more than just a saying. Dr. Phil Ayers, from his poem When the Church Bells Rang, shares, hundreds died fighting hand to hand, their names eternal in our mind. We took their hell to win their land, and that hellish day motto stand, no one left behind. While across the battlefield the church bells rang so clear, Marines brave, everyone, to you we hold so dear. Mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters still cry and ask why. That so many years ago our Marines had to die. At home, the church bells ring on high. Leo Garoniak, historian, teacher, commentator, and supporter of our veterans, states, the Vietnam War was completely different from World War II and the Korean War. In Vietnam, there was no front line for combat. The battlefield was actually anywhere and everywhere, all at the same time, and many enemy combatants did not wear uniforms, including some women and children, who in being used by the enemy were armed and dangerous, so our soldiers could never be certain who they were dealing with when encountering what appeared to be civilians. The evening news broadcasts in the USA rarely pointed out the guerrilla style of fighting by the enemy. Therefore, many of the American people did not understand the way the war was being fought. This was the first guerrilla war that American soldiers had ever encountered. When the soldiers returned home, they were not well received, partly because the American public did not understand what these soldiers were up against on the battlefields. The reason why the nature of the realities of the Vietnam War were not fully or accurately portrayed by most news media in the United States is still a mystery. Vietnam veteran John L. Smith shares, our country was in turmoil, and my generation was questioning the federal government, asking why. When we returned home, we were not welcomed by friends and sometimes even our families. I did not tell anyone that I had been in the military for 40 years. At that time, less than 5% of Americans had been in service with the military, and so that left 95% of the American public unable to really understand what we were doing in Vietnam, which contributed to why we were treated the way we were when we came back to the United States. Veteran Deb McKay explains how her father's experience influenced her. When I was growing up, the Vietnam War protesters were everywhere, and I was the one across the street supporting the military mainly because of my dad who served at that time. When I found out my dad was spit on and called a baby killer in San Francisco on his return from his second tour, it was then that I decided that something needed to be done. I did not find out that that had happened until about 20 years or so ago, and it was then when I became so motivated, and still to this day, I think our veterans are getting a raw deal. Veteran Edwin C. Carroll states, "My dad and I served. Helis picked us up and dropped us deep inland, and it was part of a hell that I do not know how to describe or say. I'm speechless, much of which I just auto-block it and try to recover. But today, on the 50th anniversary of the Marines landing in Vietnam, all the news media can talk about is a bridge in Alabama and voters' rights somewhere. This is crap, and it makes my dad and me cry bad. Our hearts are broken." Veteran William Saul, a.k.a. Turtle, shares, "The only thing I could ever want the USA to know is it's much too late. We hide in the shadows wondering if it's over and when will we ever come home. Will there be a time when I don't feel like an outcast or be ashamed of the government, but love our real America? I'm on the alert 24/7, looking, and always ready to act in a second. I live in constant fear of knowing that someone might say, 'Hey, you're a Vietnam veteran, aren't you?'" Veteran Michael Stewart asks, "I have a question now. Why is it that those who protested the Vietnam War are grown and their children are in harm's way, and their voices are silent?" Veteran Dennis Overly shares about Agent Orange. "Each day, I am saddened to see another Vietnam brother or sister lose their battle with Agent Orange. No one knew at that time that this chemical used to kill jungle foliage would 40+ years later take the lives of those who fought for this country. I too fight this battle with Agent Orange, but for my country, I would do it again. The oath we took has no expiration date." Veteran Steve Isaacson shares, "I do not want to talk about Vietnam, for it's still painful, but I will talk about after Vietnam. Over the past many years, I started helping veterans with the same or worse issues. I help them from all over the United States. I do this without pay or any type of compensation. This is how I deal with the memories. It fills my heart every time to help a veteran or a veteran's family get what they were promised. I will continue to fight until my last breath. I leave no one behind." Veteran Jim Quick states, "I would love for people to understand that Vietnam vets were proud of our country then as we are now, and we went to ensure that communism never came ashore in the USA. We never hesitated and we did our job we were sent to do. RIP to the more than 58,000 Vietnam vets that gave their all. You will never be forgotten, as well as the POWs and our MIAs still unaccounted for that endured inhumane treatment. I work hard now so that our veterans today will not experience the letdown which we felt upon our return home. So God bless and protect our veterans, and God bless America." Many of our veterans and family members of veterans have experienced healing when visiting some of our Vietnam War memorials. Among those is a sacred place in Washington, D.C. known as the Wall, where the names of the missing or fallen are chiseled in granite. Vietnam veteran Spencer D. Ney Jr. shares from one of his songs about the wall. "Now there at the wall, like granite it stands, are the names of the ones who didn't come back. Be reverent, respectful when you walk by. For the cause of freedom these young people died. Chiseled in granite are the names of them all. The sons and the daughters are there on the wall. 58,183. For the cause of freedom, they died honestly." Veteran Joe Doyle tells his story of going to the wall and the healing that resulted. I would like to share a thought that truly helped me go to the wall for the first time ever in 2012. I had never gone, for I feared the ghosts that I would find there. But words of wisdom came from my wife, and it's a message for all of us vets with survivor's guilt and that deeper guilt we never speak of. She told me that the dead have no ill will towards the living, and I knew it to be true, for I was the one who had been carrying all those feelings. The dead had gone beyond the cares of this life. They were really in a better place. I went, I cried, I healed some more, and after, there seemed to be fewer ghosts. And my prayer is for all to work out the ghosts. Vietnam veteran Bill Robinson, longest held enlisted POW in American history, shares. Very simply, without our veterans, there would be no United States of America. East Tennessee patriot Sue Dauber shares, I watched many friends and loved ones go to war in Vietnam while I was in high school, and I lost friends. So these veterans are dear to my heart. Tennessee was the first state to declare March 29th as the official Vietnam Veterans Day in 2008, and it's now nationwide. In 2014, I was burdened that these veterans had not been recognized properly in Knoxville and the surrounding areas, so it became my passion and mission to make it happen. On March 29, 2014, Rolling Thunder, Inc., Tennessee Chapter 3 hosted the first Vietnam Veterans Day Welcome Home ceremony to a standing room-only group. It was finally a day where many felt they were truly honored and welcomed home. Albert Joseph Poe, award-winning author and poet and strong supporter of our military, shares this from his poem, Heroes Inside. Many years silent as the years have now passed, dark memories embedded, they always do last. But they're truly respected for what they've done, their honor, courage, and the battles they've won. Now things have changed as they walk with great pride. We thank God for these warriors and the heroes inside. Vietnam veteran Jimmy Evera, a.k.a. Big Dog, shares about what Vietnam Veterans Day means to him. As a Vietnam...
Oops. Don't know what that is. Sorry about that. Get it back. I urge you to go to my Facebook, scroll all the way down. There's a tremendous amount of information on there that you need to know about. Now let me see if I can come back up here. And what we're listening to is Ann M. Wolfe,
Vietnam.
After Vietnam.
It is interesting how a word can invoke so many feelings, memories. Veteran or a veteran's family get what they were promised. I will continue to fight until my last breath. I leave no one behind. Veteran Jim Quick states, I would love for people to understand that Vietnam vets were proud of our country then as we are now, and we went to ensure that communism never came ashore in the USA. We never hesitated and we did our job we were sent to do. RIP to the more than 58,000 Vietnam vets that gave their all. You will never be forgotten, as well as the POWs and our MIAs still unaccounted for that endured inhumane treatment. I work hard now so that our veterans today will not experience the letdown which we felt upon our return home. So God bless and protect our veterans, and God bless America. Many of our veterans and family members of veterans have experienced healing when visiting some of our Vietnam War memorials. Among those is a sacred place in Washington, D.C. known as the Wall, where the names of the missing or fallen are chiseled in granite. Vietnam veteran Spencer D. Nave Jr. shares from one of his songs about the wall. Now there at the wall, black granite it stands, by the names of the ones who didn't come back. Be reverent, respectful when you walk by. For the cause of freedom these young people died. Chiseled in granite are the names of them all. The sons and the daughters are there on the wall. 58,183. For the cause of freedom, they died honestly. Veteran Joe Doyle tells his story of going to the wall and the healing that resulted. I would like to share a thought that truly helped me go to the wall for the first time ever in 2012. I had never gone, for I feared the ghosts that I would find there. But words of wisdom came from my wife, and it's a message for all of us vets with survivor's guilt and that deeper guilt we never speak of. She told me that the dead have no ill will towards the living, and I knew it to be true, for I was the one who had been carrying all those feelings. The dead had gone beyond the cares of this life. They were really in a better place. I went, I cried, I healed some more, and after, there seemed to be fewer ghosts, and my prayer is for all to work out the ghosts. Vietnam veteran Bill Robinson, longest held enlisted POW in American history, shares. Very simply, without our veterans, there would be no United States of America. East Tennessee patriot Sue Dauber shares, I watched many friends and loved ones go to war in Vietnam while I was in high school, and I lost friends. So these veterans are dear to my heart. Tennessee was the first state to declare March 29th as the official Vietnam Veterans Day in 2008, and it's now nationwide. In 2014, I was burdened that these veterans had not been recognized properly in Knoxville and the surrounding areas, so it became my passion and mission to make it happen. On March 29, 2014, Rolling Thunder, Inc., Tennessee Chapter 3 hosted the first Vietnam Veterans Day Welcome Home ceremony to a standing room-only group. It was finally a day where many felt they were truly honored and welcomed home. Albert Joseph Poe, award-winning author and poet and strong supporter of our military, shares this from his poem, Heroes Inside. Many years silent as the years have now passed, dark memories embedded, they always do last. But they're truly respected for what they've done, their honor, courage, and the battles they've won. Now things have changed as they walk with great pride. We thank God for these warriors and the heroes inside. Vietnam veteran Jimmy Avera, a.k.a. Big Dog, shares about what Vietnam Veterans Day means to him. As a Vietnam veteran, this day is one of remembrance, where we can reflect upon our lives and personal experiences relative to the Vietnam War and our service tour over there. We remember the less popular, undeserved treatment we received, absorbed, and endured when we returned to our homeland. We also remember the devastating effects that the war had on our lives after that, both mentally and physically. Hopefully, our day will be a gathering of comrades, brothers and sisters, in arms where we can share greetings, smiles, tears, and memories. Most importantly, this is a day to pause, remember, and pay respect to all of our fellow servicemen and women who made the ultimate sacrifice by giving their lives during the Vietnam War. Also, we must re-emphasize our POW-MIA urgency, knowing and broadcasting to our nation's citizens that we must diligently continue to pursue bringing our troops home. Currently, there are over 1,643 unaccounted for MIAs from the Vietnam War. We must never forget nor leave anyone behind. If we forget just one American soldier, then we as a country have failed. On this day, I can proudly say welcome home to each and every Vietnam veteran. They are, and always will be, my comrades, brothers, and sisters. In closing, I would like to suggest that if you ever encounter some of our Vietnam veterans, take a moment and extend your hand to them. Look in their eyes and let them know with your soul how much you appreciate their service and sacrifice. And if you have a moment more, and if the veteran feels like sharing, consider receiving one of the greatest gifts of all, the opportunity to hear from a hero sharing history through his or her eyes. And to all who participated in this presentation, I join with the American people in saying to you that words cannot express our gratitude for your time and contributions. Thank you. This is Chaplain Ann M. Wolfe. God be with us as we move forward with great hope together.
We've got the whole thing up there. Today is Memorial Day. She talked about a guerrilla war. What you saw at Waco was the beginning of a guerrilla war here, perhaps. If we don't stand up against the communists that have infiltrated and control most of our government, most of our armed forces, not all of it, not all of it. There are good cops out there that care about the people. I've been to hundreds of runs, hundreds of events across the last 40-some-odd years, or more, 50. I've been to these runs. I've rubbed elbows with Hell's Angels, with Outlaws, with Banditos, many other clubs. What they're trying to do, they don't want gun owners. They want to demonize gun owners, and they want to demonize our veterans now. Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security, DHS, is afraid of those veterans, and that's why they let Monsanto, they use Monsanto to spray us with Agent Orange in Vietnam. They didn't want combat-hardened veterans coming back and recognizing what I recognized back in 1964, that every plank on the Communist Manifesto had been established intact in America. Central bank, corporate farms, control of education. Communists have taken over our government. And we've had show after show showing you may think Franklin Delano Roosevelt was a hero, and maybe he was in some aspects, but he also turned you over to the bankers. He took your gold. He made it illegal for you to own gold and gave it to the banks over $16 an ounce. What's happened to our government? I've tried to tell you. For over 20 years, I've published the Free American and done this radio show, trying to tell you, this is what's happening, this is what's coming. The FEMA camps, I told you about Rex 84. I told you about Garden Plot 20 years ago. Nothing new is happening. Jade Helm, ain't nothing new. But the tanks and the Army vehicles and the UN vehicles that are moving into this country should be a wake-up call to all Americans. And that's why they don't want the veterans Matter of fact, there's a training class going on June 26th here in Texas. Again, some of these veterans are hosting this. I've been to one. It's great information you need. How to maintain your weapons, how to use them, how to control them. I helped start the militias around the country. Did it in the governor's office. Did it with Governor Gary Johnson in New Mexico. And me and my biker friends used to escort the governor while he was riding his bicycle down in Alamogordo over to White Sands. He's been in my home all the time, the ADL. And don't forget about it, folks. It's the ADL Southern Poverty Law that have done everything they could to destroy me, to demonize me, to cut off my source of income, and to keep you from donating to freeamerican.com. If you walk into a library with your portable computer and you try to go to freeamerican.com, they won't let you. I'm blocked. I'm blocked. I'm the most blocked person out there on the internet. I used to tell you that you can consider me the canary in the coal mine. If it happens to me, it won't be long before it happens to you, to your neighbors. And that accident that I was in 10 years ago, "5 days ago, it was 10 years. 5 days ago, it was 10 years when they tried to kill me for referring to 9/11 as an exaggerated case of Jewish lightning. And it certainly was. It was the ADL and the Southern Poverty Law that came after me to try to make you think something bad about being a biker. And the DEA agents, or whoever they were, Mossad, FBI, they said they were CIA. If so, they were operating this country illegally. Tell me they didn't like my motorcycle magazine. That's because it was still alive. Free American was gone. I survived the accident. I survived 3 months of drugging with Halcyon, Haldol, Valium, and morphine. Something they didn't want you to know. 9/11 was brought down, and I told you that in my March 2004 issue. It had building number 7 on the cover. Told you it'd been condemned. Told you the engineering firms, and then I also told you they had planted explosives in the building in case it needed to be brought down. They couldn't build scaffolding that high, so they brought it down. Now we've got Jade Helm coming up here. If you complain about it, if you call your local stations, you might get a little knock on the door by the FBI. Why are you upset with Jade Helm? It's just a military action. It's just our training. Train on your own land. You got plenty of land here. You don't need to come into our land and do this, and they're doing that. They want to infiltrate their operatives, not in uniform. They want to put their operatives in your town to spy on you. They're trying, just like they're trying to, this whole program with the bikers is to make you think something bad about being armed and riding 2 wheels. They're afraid of the bikers for the same reason they're afraid of the veterans. We love America. We love our country. There was no expiration date on that oath that we took to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. No expiration date at all. All right. Minister Cynthia Williams. Who's this? Welcome, and Ufta is in the chat room. Yeah, Cynthia Williams. We got a caller on here?
Yes.
Hello, who do we have here?
Told me about your show, and
what's your name, sir?
I'm enjoying it.
What's your name?
My name is Abdul Rahim. Abdul Rahim is my Muslim name.
Okay. What can I do for you, sir?
I want to ask you something. My question to you is, there is a book called Blowback. Do you believe it is feasible that when Hitler knew that he was going to lose the war, he dispatched people in the United States of America and told them not to run, don't run for office, don't do any of that, take over government agencies like the CIA, the FBI, and we will continue the third rights. And is that, do you think, I believe that is the reason that our civil liberties are being taken away from us. They're actually doing the same thing that Hitler would have done. But the book called Blowback said that he sent people over there because he knew he was going to lose the war. And these same things that are being done, like our civil liberties being taken away, GMO, chemtrails, is actually set up by Hitler a long time ago.
There were people in Hitler's regime, and probably most of them Jews, that did do this. There were the Bushes who were Jews, and matter of fact, the Jewish Guide for Soldiers and Sailors, put out in 1945 after the war was over, gave credit to Colonel George Bush, who served in Washington's army, and George Washington was told by Cornwallis that the Jews would take over our religion, and that sometime in the future, hundreds of years in the future, the United States, while it thought of itself as being the bastion of freedom, would be taken over by the Jews, and our churches and our religions taken over by the Jews. And Prescott Bush tried to do exactly that, and George Bush tried to do exactly that. So, yeah, the Nazis are still here, but the Germans, and all of the Germans, and Hitler himself, were not the evil people that the Jewish-controlled media tried to make them out to be.
Yes.
Now, and they're still operating. You know, there are Jews, and you know, Henry Kissinger on down. He set up the deals with China. That doesn't mean the Chinese are our enemies, and the Russians were never our enemies, but they created a Cold War so they could sell them atomic weapons. So the Jews could sell atomic weapons to everybody and set up the state of Israel, a safe country for Jewish criminals.
And as you know, as a Muslim, you know, I believe that you know, with that war that transpired, I believe that they are not entitled to their land. And I see saying that is my perspective. Just like you coming into my house, and you know what I'm saying. So outside entities say that you can take a room in my house, and me and my wife, even if we at odds with each other, we're not going to allow you to take control of a certain room in our house.
Well, isn't that exactly what Obama has done with the illegal aliens? He brought them in. He wants you to take your money to feed them and clothe them and provide them shelter. So that's happening right now. And these illegal aliens are just like what happened in Russia when the Jews took over, when the Bolsheviks took over, and they went on to slaughter 60 million white Christian Russians. That's what's going to be happening here. That's what Jade Helm is about. They're trying to turn our military against them, against us. They want you to be afraid. They want you to be afraid.
Well, this thing that's going, things that are going on in Ferguson and other places like this in the inner city, all these are by design, in my opinion, to be able to bring in the National Guards. And this chaos, as Malcolm X said, all of this is by design. Okay, so they could bring in the National Guard, so they could bring in people, agencies like that and head them to the FEMA camps.
Nothing happens by accident. Nothing happens by accident. Malcolm X was right on. Dr. Martin Luther King was right on. And they had to be taken out because they wouldn't have been able to get the blacks to riot and turn against us if Martin Luther King had been able to talk to him. So they had to kill him. And they killed Kennedy because he issued Executive Order 1110, issuing money, United States notes. I got one of them in my pocket. He issued United States notes, and they killed him.
Yeah. And I don't know the reason why they haven't killed Minister Farrakhan, but I think they think if they do kill Minister Farrakhan, there's going to be hell to pay. And I think they realize that. Well, talking about Minister Farrakhan of the Nation of Islam, if they kill him, it'll be hell to pay. I think
the whole Islam, the war on Islam was planned over 150 years ago by Albert Pike, Master Mason. He said we'd have 3 world wars.
I'm enjoying your show, and I'm going to press the follow button on this so I can continue following.
I appreciate that.
Listen to you on a regular basis. The time permits itself. And
you know, this is the whole thing. Remember that the plan of the enemy is pretty simple. Oldest plan in warfare: divide and conquer. They want us fighting with the blacks. And let me tell you, I got approached by a weightlifter or a football player, black football player, about 20 years ago, at a party up in Miami Beach, at a penthouse in Miami Beach. And he said, "How do you feel about us black folks?" I said, "Well, you know, I got to be real straight with you, brother." And I hit him on a real muscular arm, slapped him on the shoulder. I said, "I don't like niggers. I don't like niggers, white or black." "Oh, you might be all right." "Yeah, you might be all right. I just wouldn't get in my face again like that." It ain't healthy.
I'm like you. I don't like.
Yeah, and there's
like
been.
I don't like niggers. I'm talking about because ignorant niggers could be black or white. I just totally ignorant people. It doesn't make a difference what the nationality or ethnic background is. You know, with just ignorant people, not black as a race. I'm talking about anybody that exhibits those type of attributes.
That's right.
No matter what color they are, that's just a word. So I guess in essence, I'm saying I don't care for ignorant and disrespectful people. And that's just a word somebody made up, you know, to put somebody down and belittle somebody. So, you know, to me, that word that applies to any type of color, any shade.
That's right.
So, yeah, I agree with you.
That's right. And look, you know, I've known Dr. Martin Luther King was a brilliant guy, and they want to try to put him down by saying he was a communist. Bullshit. This is what they do, you know. Oh, Clay, he's a racist. Clay, oh, he's anti-government. Clay, he's anti-Semitic. I don't care who your grandmother slept with. I don't care. What I care is what you're doing today. Are you working for the good of your fellow Americans? Are you working good for the good of your neighbor? If it's good for you, it'll be good for your neighbor, won't it?
Yes, sir. But can I make a comment when you talk about Martin Luther King? Is that okay?
Sure.
My comment my comment about Martin Luther King, and I probably because I come from a different era, I could have never followed Martin Luther King because I would have followed Malcolm X because I don't prescribe to theory of turn the other cheek. I don't prescribe to that. And I think it would have been better for people of color, like when they had Black Wall Street, to get themselves together, you know, and that way they could have been respected as people. Then they could have joined in with other nationalities because they would have been self-supportive. But Martin Luther King said at the end of his time, I feel that I'm sending my people into a house that is burning down. So I respect him, but I couldn't never follow. You know, I respect what everybody is saying about him, but Malcolm was my man.
Well, we can. I believe that we can work together. I am not racist in the least. If you want to live in a black neighborhood, we'll make it the best black neighborhood in the city. Work together. Become self-sufficient. And if you're a white man, I don't believe if you want to join the Aryan nations or the Hell's Angels because you're white, that doesn't mean you're a racist.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is once we would have became self-reliant and economically sound, we could have integrated because we would have been self-supportive and not relying and being subservient to people because economically we could have supported ourselves. That's what I'm saying.
I think every black man and every white man in America ought to own 5 acres of a family farm, grow their own food, and grow hemp. I believe that that's the way to become self-sufficient. Put solar on your roof. Quit supporting the energy companies. Quit supporting the oil companies. Become self-sufficient in your own home and own neighborhood.
I'm gonna have to call back, but I'll be listening. Okay.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. Appreciate your call. Bye bye. All right.
You come on off.
All right, a caller here. Where are we at here? We've got 6 more minutes. Folks, you need to get some of my books and read some of my books. You can read them for $10. Shop.freeamerican.com. Mystery Babylon is a history of what I've been through in the last 10 years. Just in the last 10 years. Actually, it's a little more than that. You've got a history of the Rothschilds. You got a history of the banksters. And you can go all the way back to the Bible and how the so-called Jews, as Benjamin Friedman, Jewish historian, put it, you've got that. And you can read what he says about the so-called Jews and the hoax they put on you guys, the hoax they put on you, trying to tell you that Jesus was somehow Jewish. They have pulled a hoax for 2,000 years. That's right, David. It's almost coming up on 50 years. I said it 45 years ago. I wrote 2 books in prison. I'm working on those now. I'm just getting ready to start editing those and continuing and expanding on them. One is called Solomon, one is called Lucifer. And they're actually a story about one person, one entity. I may change it to Immortals Among Us. It's the story of immortals. May not be exactly what you've been led to believe. May not be. but it should start you thinking. And you can get some of my magazines, the latest magazines. I'll be finishing off one more here very shortly. Things are happening so fast that haven't been able to catch up. I will try to do that. If you go to freeamerican.com, you can make a donation. Click on one of the donate buttons and make a donation, whatever you can afford. $5 would be wonderful. $2.99 you can get a magazine or two. Get 3 or 4 and read them. And if you go to shop.freeamerican.com, you can get the magazines, you can get whatever. I am Clay Douglas. I am the Free American. I hope you enjoy and share this Memorial Day show. It's very important. Very important. I didn't go to Vietnam, but I am a Vietnam-era veteran. I volunteered to go to Vietnam. RA all the way. God bless you all. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.